We're here with Richard Marsh, Carmen Trever, Cheryl Hope, and myself, Elaine Admiral. And today we're going to give you a little bit of a recap on what we're talking about here on this podcast, and that is the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. This is a cult that is across Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Jamaica, Barbados, Switzerland, Sweden, Germany. I can't remember all of them. France, there we go. France and Germany, yeah. So, it's spread across the world. It's only, 50-some thousand? And we're all ex-members. And why we've come together is to share our stories and to answer questions because people don't know anything about this cult. So...
And it's International Cult Awareness Day today.
There we go. Yeah. That's why we're doing it today. We're going to be taking questions from the audience. We have some questions already, too, that have been sent to us. And we're just going to basically answer some of the basic questions that non-members have about this cult. So, Carmen, what's some of the rules that make this cult different?
Some of the rules that make it different.
Like make it a cult and not a church.
Well, we have a list. Do you want to go down the list?
Yeah, let's do that.
Down the list, yeah.
Yeah, let's go down the list that we talked about in one of our other previous podcasts. We had a list that we went down, and we kind of want to jump back into that list and go more in depth to each point, just to help. We have people question why us as ex-members use the term cult. Some people don't like it. It is a very strong word. Any ex-member you talk to will refer to it as a cult. I think 99% of us use the term cult. And I think it's important why we know it's a cult and to help you guys understand more of why it's a cult. Even though they have this friendly Christian veneer facade that they present to the community, and they do a lot of good to the community, it still is under an umbrella of a cult. And that's kind of what we want to go through and explain to you guys how it is a cult. So I'll share the screen on this list that we have.
And so this list is from the International Cultic Studies Association. So they're an international group that studies cults. So this is their list of basically what defines a cult. So the first one, we have the group would display excessive, zealous, and unquestioning commitment to its leader, whether he is dead or alive, regardless of his belief system, ideology, and practices, as the truth, as law. Ooh, boy, oh boy. Does that sound familiar, Richard?
It very much does. And unfortunately, our one happens to be alive. We expect that will change in due course. But yeah, I mean, in the PBCC, the word of Bruce Hales is law. It's above the Bible. It's above everything else. And that's regardless of what he says. If he says something that is clearly against Christianity or against morals or against decency or against the law, he said it, and that's what goes. I mean, you couldn't give a better description than excessively zealous and unquestioning commitment. That's exactly what the PBCC members give to Bruce Hales, and that's exactly what's expected of them.
Yeah, so they totally fit number one. Let's go to number two. Questioning, doubt, and dissent are discouraged or even punished. Well,
my favorite.
Yeah, Carmen, why don't you explain to the listeners the two levels of discipline that the brethren like to use?
Well, you can either be shut up or you can be excommunicated. If you're shut up, you can still have contact with some family members. If you're excommunicated, you get zippo, no contact.
It's like they put you to death, isn't it? Like they completely will no longer even like acknowledge your existence. You're taken out of photos and everything, right?
And they refer to it as assembly death.
Assembly death.
And I mean,
Wow.
you really you, Carmen, yourself went through, you were the epitome of this number 2.
Of the punished, oh yes. You will get explained why you're wrong, and then you will get yelled at in meeting. And when you finally don't want to listen to any more yelling at in meeting, you got a choice. You can pack up and move out, or you can, I don't know, sit and take it.
Wow. So they definitely fit number 2 with punishment, severe punishment.
Yep.
Let's go to number 3. Mind-altering practices such as meditation, chanting, speaking in tongues, denunciation sessions are used in excess
and debilitating.
And
read that. And debilitating.
And debilitating work routines are used in excess and serve to suppress doubts about the group and its leader. That's definitely used. Richard, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about like the work practices? Because we just had a great podcast on that. You guys did.
Well, yeah. I mean, the work practices, particularly under the Bruce Hales regime, everyone is supposed to work incredibly hard and incredibly long hours, and then you also supposed to put in. I mean, and that's in your workplace. That's in your money-earning, wage-earning work, which of course is, all directed and controlled by UBT. And then once you've finished that, you're expected to put in endless time on volunteer work, such as working in their Campus and Co supermarkets, or as a school trustee, or as in any one of dozens of administrative jobs within the church to do with their church meetings and their church money raising schemes. And then on top of that, you are supposed to read all the ministry. They send you every week. They send you a book which is transcripts of all the church meetings with Bruce Hales. You're supposed to read all that, and then you're supposed to spend at least as much time reading the Bible as reading ministry, and then you're supposed to catch up with all the past ministries of the previous so-called great men of the recovery. So it actually adds up to about 42 hours a day if you actually did everything that you're supposed to do. So basically pretty much everyone inside the PBCC is kind of sleepwalking through life. They don't have time to think. They don't have time to question or doubt because there's always such a long list of jobs to do. And then the other thing I would add to that mind-altering practice, the main mind-altering practice within the PBCC is excessive use of strong alcohol, which is strongly encouraged from a very young age. And they have a very, very high incidence of alcoholism. And the stress of their extreme work life, tends to drive them to alcohol.
Yeah.
So I would say...
I can attest to that alcohol, Richard, because Dean Hales gave me half a glass full of scotch when I was 14 years old in Australia. And Bruce Hales was sitting right across. Yeah. This would have been 14 years old, so 2004. Yeah, like I was 14 years old. 14 years old.
Yeah, crazy. And I didn't even mention that, of course, you also, as well as all this, you have to go to church every day, which is going to be at least an hour in church. And for many people, maybe up to an hour traveling to get to church and to get home again. So it's and this is continuous indoctrination or brainwashing. So every single day you're subjected to this repetitive, I don't know if you call it speaking in tongues, but you do wonder sometimes. But it's just repetitive, repeating the same mantras that you must respect the Grand Poobah, and you must do this, and you mustn't do that, and you mustn't doubt, and you mustn't think for yourself. Famous Hales quote is, "We do the thinking, you do the doing."
Wow.
In other words, ordinary regular members are not expected to think for themselves. Bruce Hales does the thinking for them. They just have to obey.
And so, how many days a week do they go to church?
7.
7 days a week. So that's that definitely even fits into the mind-altering practices
Well,
for
I would
sure.
say so, yeah.
This all fits that one. So let's go on to the next one. The next checkbox is the leadership dictates, sometimes in great detail, how members should think, act, and feel. For example, members must get permission to date, change jobs, marry, or leaders prescribe what types of clothes to wear, where to live, whether or not to have children, how to discipline children, and so forth. Cheryl.
Yeah, check, right? That's all there. And you do. I mean, you have to, the Mr. Hales has to give you that permission to marry.
So,
And I mean, all the women, you're told the women are told how to dress. The men are told how to dress. There's certain types of haircuts that are acceptable, some that are not acceptable. And I think our last podcast that we did with Christine, she went over a lot of this too, from an outsider's perspective, right? And even in their jobs. So even someone who's not a part of the PPCC, if they're going to work for a member of the PPCC, they have to also dress the same way as a PPCC.
and what are some of those dress code?
Well, you've
rules?
got your skirts that are have to be below the knee.
For women?
Yeah. Your long hair. You're not allowed to cut your hair. I mean, back when I was there, you weren't allowed to cut your hair. You're not allowed to wear makeup. You have to have a ribbon in your hair. You have to wear a scarf on your head. Neckline can't be too low.
So what about rules for men?
Clean cut, shaven. And I mean, they all live in white shirts and black pants.
But it seems like there's a lot more rules for the women than there was for the men.
There is, very much so. Yeah. But I know back in my day, the men weren't allowed to wear shorts. And I think Richard, you left much later than I did. Were they allowed to wear shorts?
No, shorts still out.
Yeah.
Is that because Jesus wore pants?
And I mean, even when you go down into here about changing jobs, I mean, I remember with my dad, after there was some stuff that went on and he was placed at another job. So, so much of the job stuff is even dictated. And I mean, the rich go to where the rich are, the poor go to where the poor were, right? My dad never got a job that would make him rich. His jobs were all jobs that were on our low pay scale.
And are you allowed to work for non-Brethren members? Can you get a job anywhere else?
I don't think they do anymore. Back in my day, yeah, in my day, I remember my sisters worked for a butcher. Yeah, I don't know, but I think they really keep it inside the businesses now.
Oh, they do now, 100%.
Yeah, Richard, you can speak more to that because you left since. Yeah.
Let's try the next one. Let's see if they fit anything in the next one. What's the next one there? The group is elitist, claiming a special, exalted status for itself, its leaders, and its members. For example, the leader is considered the Messiah, a special being, an avatar, the man of God, or a group, or the leader is on a special mission to save humanity. Well, except in this case, it's only to save the brethren.
I mean, and now he's called the CEO. They refer to him as a CEO.
Yeah. Oh, so sneaky. So sneaky. Like, come on, guys. Grow up.
A special exalted status. So they're the only ones that get the Lord to come to the supper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, it's in their printed ministry. This was said a long time ago, and this is with reference to what most churches refer to as communion. It was said the Lord will go to these other churches and he'll look in and he'll pass by and he just goes to the brethren.
Oh, and something I heard the other day, they have to get there 15 minutes early and unlock the door because they have to let the Lord in. So they have to get there 15 minutes early. Yeah.
They could let him have a key.
How old is Jesus and he still can't get through doors? So I was confused as a kid because they said the exact same thing. But our church, our meeting room, as they would call it, which is the church building it was in Lachine, Montreal, and gross little building. But there was 3 or 4 other churches on this exact same street. And I remember thinking to myself, how busy Jesus must be in the morning. Like, if I thought getting up early at 4 a.m. to go to the supper was bad, like Jesus must be up all morning running to all these churches and realizing that he can't get into them because they're non-brethren. Because they said he tries the other doors. So in my mind, he was very busy.
And who lets him know that he has to get there 15 minutes early? Like, does
Yeah.
he have an agenda?
Yeah,
Well,
but the brethren
this brings up another point, because when Bruce Hales goes to a city and he takes a meeting, the brethren have to assemble 2 hours early and sit there in silence and wait for Bruce to come. But when you're going to communion, you only have to be there 15 minutes early for Jesus. So that makes Bruce Hales about 8 times more important than God, I think.
That's incredible. Like, they really do worship this leader, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely they do. Yeah.
What's the next one there?
Okay, let's go down a little bit.
Okay. The group has a polarized us versus them mentality, which may cause conflict with the wider society. Okay, well, I'll take a little stab at this one. So they definitely do. They say that they start off by being elitist in the way that they say that we're chosen. They say we were chosen by God. So if you ever leave, of course, you're turning your back on God and you're slapping him in the face. But the world is considered so evil, they won't even eat food with people that are outside the church. They will not even drink a glass of water with someone who is outside of the brethren. So,
oh wait, you forgot. They will drink it when it's whiskey, though.
Expensive whiskey. Yes, we had that
whiskey, yeah.
You had that in the last episode. That was amazing. They will drink it when it's expensive whiskey. So does it cause conflict? Of course, because you're not allowed to participate in society. You can't go to university. You can't take a normal job. You can't be part of a union. The list of rules goes on and on. So it definitely has conflict with wider society. What do you think, Richard? Should we go on to the next one, or did I?
Yeah, I mean, basically, they divide the whole of humanity into them and us. So when they say the world, they mean every single person in the whole globe that isn't a member of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. And the world is evil, and the world is wicked, and worldly people are wicked. Very simple black and white divide in their minds.
Yeah. So let's go to the next one. The leader is not accountable to any authorities. Oh, we have spoken at length about how much they think they are above the law. And this is probably going to get some of them arrested because it's just, they really do believe this, and they believe it with their whole heart. And it's going to be really hard for them in jail.
And I mean, they believe this so much that if there is somebody in jail, they'll go and get that person out of jail, because that person, no brother or sister should be in jail or with the authorities. Like, they fully believe that you should never put another brother or sister in jail.
To the point, they will cover up wife abuse, sexual abuse, any kind of abuse, and they will not allow it to go to the authorities.
Like, I remember I was actually at a Bruce Hales convention in Tennessee, must have been around 2006, and he said that the police were an evil work against evil. And I'm paraphrasing exactly the words he word, but he literally called the police that were evil, but we needed them because they worked against evil. And I was just like, I remember as a kid just being like, wow, look, I always loved the cops. I always thought the cops were the good guys. you know? And why is he calling the police evil? And they hang on his every word. Let's go to the next one. The group teaches or implies that it is supposedly exalted ends justify whatever means it deems necessary. This may result in members participating in behaviors or activities they would have considered reprehensible or unethical before they joined the group. Well, this one's a little bit of a weird one, and explain why, Carmen.
Because they believe they are above the law, and so therefore they'll do whatever they need to do to stay away from the law.
Exactly. And
also they lie through their teeth. It's just lies.
But the only the point I want to make is that almost nobody in the Plymouth Brethren has joined it, right? They're all born into it. Their parents, their grandparents. It's just been generations. So it's not that they would have considered it reprehensible before. It's all that they've ever known.
Yeah. Never even knew it was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I like the very last at the end of this, lying to family or friends or collecting money for bogus charities. Can you imagine the Brethren collecting money for bogus charities? Shocking. Surely they wouldn't do that, would they, Lane?
I seem to have heard about this charity that the Brethren like to use called Rapid Relief Team, which seems to show up at disasters to hand out food while people are working, which is really nice. But it just happens to look a bit like, take a picture of me while I hand out charity boxes, It's like there's a meme about that, right? With the guy like taking the selfie while he hands out money to the poor. Like he wants to show everybody that he's doing that. And that's exactly what the Plymouth Brethren's charity, its biggest one or its most popular one, Rapid Relief Team, really is. It's a hey, look at us hand out food to firefighters. Please take tons of pictures. We're just normal. And I like to comment when I see these posts on Instagram. I comment underneath. I'm like, the people handing out the food, can they eat it with the people they hand it out to?
Something else odd about it, Rapid Relief Team. I mean, that kind of, if you heard of an organization called Rapid Relief Team, you would think, is this some sort of emergency enema service if you get constipated?
Yeah, I don't know what they just want to show up at scenes and they want the cameras to be rolling. That's really what it is. They don't even know what the word charity means. They don't even know what the word altruism means because they've never been like that, right? It's all for their own community and their own work. And, to keep everything inside, like what they actually use the women as slave labor now. They've come up with this their own grocery store, Campus & Co. And the women are obligated to volunteer with no pay. How volunteer? It's insane. Yeah. So, okay, let's get through this list. The leadership induces feelings of shame and or guilt in order to influence and or control members. Often this is done through peer pressure and subtle forms of persuasion.
Oh man, I got to do this one. This is literally how many years of priestly visits that I and my family went through. Oh, it is just shame, 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 guilt, guilt, guilt. I mean, until you're in such a submission that you're begging to crawl back to them. Yeah. This is done through their priestly visits that they do all the time.
Run us through what a priestly visit was like.
So, well, I mean, okay, so I'll give you an example. Is that if I was caught talking to a worldly person on my paper route, I knew that night I was going to get a priestly visit. And obviously, of course, I'd get a phone call before meeting and it'd be like, we're going to come over for a visit after. And so they would come over after meeting and you'd sit there and they would go through exactly what, of course, in our situation, I had so many people that would follow me. And of course, all of the 3 leaders at that times, all their kids were very on me in school. And so that they would they would go back and tell, okay, you know what, Cheryl did this, Cheryl did that. And then of course you get a priestly visit. Then they come and priestly visits, they're there to intimidate you. They're there to make you feel bad. There's no help. It is about you abusing your power that was gifted to you. It's about how much you're hurting your parents. It is about what an awful person you are. About the devil's doing the devil's work versus listening to the Lord. I mean, you go on and on and on and on. Any way that they can do it. It got to be very controlling though on ours, because there was times in school when I was in the same grade as Morse Hope's daughter and another high up person. His daughter was there, and so, but mostly Morse Hope's daughter she would go and do something. And then if I was there and I would join into it, she would go home and obviously tell her dad, and her dad would I would end up getting the priestly visit over it, but it was something that she was doing too. And so I would say that, and it became this huge, just power game for an hour and a half.
Oh.
So, I mean,
And how old are you at this point?
Oh, back then, could have been 14. When the real control stuff came in, would have been around 14.
So at what age can you start committing sins? Because there has to be an innocence
12.
period, right?
12. So it's
12
where you get. And so I got my paper.
So on your birthday, boom.
Yeah. We started getting priestly visits. It was just shortly after I got my paper out. I got my paper out like a couple weeks before I turned 12, and they started after that. So very much they were just waiting for the day we turned 12, and boom, we're on you. Yeah.
And were the priests always male?
Yes. Oh, yes, very much so. Yeah.
And
I mean,
always in pairs?
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Yeah. Although I did have Morse would give me priestly visits on my paper route. And it was just him. So I did have them. I did have some with Morse just by myself.
Okay. So we guys, you just heard it. They hit this one. They nailed this one in bold letters. Like, wow. These we're going to go more into this after we get through the list about what a priestly visit was like, because they were abuse. They were a very, very abusive thing.
Yeah, that was their sword, so to speak, to get rid of what they needed to get rid of.
Yes. Hey, Cheryl, why don't you read the next one?
Okay. Subservience to the leader or group requires members to cut ties with family and friends and to radically alter the personal goals and activities they had before they joined the group. And I mean, we all know that this is what they base their whole foundation of the PBCC on, is their rule of separation. And Yves, you're gone. You're dead. You are. I mean, we showed another cast exactly the pictures and how you're taken right out of the pictures.
When's the last, like none of us on this podcast here have talked to our families and in a normal conversation in years, right? Like they will not. So when it's cut ties, what Carmen was saying earlier, and about them being put to death, and they literally pretend you are dead.
They don't know how to fight for you. So, like, I'm going to kind of give a little bit of backstory. I actually had I had connection with my parents off and on. And when my husband had to have a heart transplant, obviously we were going through hell up in Edmonton. And I would call my mom for support. And it ended up with her crying and her wishing that things were different. It wasn't support at all. There was no support in it. It ended up me having to now feel guilty because now my mom's crying and my mom can't be here. And I ended up sitting down and I wrote them another really, really long letter. And I actually cut it off this time and said, like, it wasn't good for my health. I could not take care of my husband and also have to listen to my mom cry on the phone about how she wished things were different, but yet she didn't know how to fight to make things different. She couldn't come and stay with me. That's what I needed. I needed my mom to be at my house. I needed my mom to be here with helping my youngest daughter, and I couldn't get that. And so I was the one that ended up just saying, you know what, I can't do this wishy-washy stuff. I either need you all in or I have to let go. And I never ever heard anything back from that letter. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So when I contacted my sister about things, and I asked her if she'd read the letter, she hadn't read the letter. She knew about the letter, and it was, I had written them off. Like that's literally the message they gave to the rest of my family, is that I'd written them off. But really what it was that this cry for like, hey, you either need to be all in with me to help me, or I can't do what you're giving me. It's because it's just, I mean, you guys all know, it's, even if you do have some conversation with them, it's very limited. It's harder on you having the conversation with them versus not having anything. It's just, it's a very cutthroat way to really screw up your family. And they just truly believe that it's this separation, that as long as we are not in there, they cannot have that connection with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents do not know how to fight for their children. They do not know how to fight for their children.
So it's a belief. It's a little stupid belief in their head that gets planted in there in childhood that says, you are special. You are different than all the other humans on earth. God chose you. Do you know what that fucking does to someone's ego? Like, thinking that you're special and being brought up like that it's a terrible thing. And now they when they see a family member leave, they cry about it, thinking that the devil has stolen them away, and then refuse to communicate with them for the rest of their lives because they think Jesus will be happy. Jesus will be happier that they don't speak to their children.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Okay, the group is preoccupied with bringing in new members. Well,
this one, they actually, well, no, we talked about this last time. Richard, didn't you say that they do it by
it's reproduction, not recruitment.
yeah.
I mean, they are, I notice they're sometimes referred to as evangelical, an evangelical cult. Evangelical means preaching. It means going out and spreading the gospel and spreading good news. They don't do any of that. They have this lousy.
But they do it to themselves. They preach to themselves, right?
Yeah. They have one lousy little street preaching a week, which is basically designed to keep people away. And if anyone shows any interest, the last thing they're ever going to do is try and recruit them or invite them to come to the meeting hall, because that's all too difficult and embarrassing. Nearly everyone, like 99% of PBCC members, are born into the PBCC. And that's because they don't recruit anyone, but their numbers are going up and up. And the reason is that they encourage large families, they ban contraception, every male must get married. If you don't get married at a young age, there's something wrong with you and you're put under relentless pressure. And so, of course, their numbers increase generation after generation after generation. Their numbers probably go up about 10% a year. And it just carries on and on. So when we say they are preoccupied with bringing in new members, yes, they are. And they do that by getting all the young men married, everyone married that they possibly can, and encouraging them to have as large a family as possible. That's how they bring in the new members.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Okay, the group
The next one
Yeah.
is the.
Go ahead, Carmen.
The next one is this one should be their mantra. This should be the sign over the door. The group is preoccupied with making money.
But what does money have to do with Jesus?
Who would have thought that the Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil? They forgot that part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Bruce Hales is above Jesus, I think, now, right? Because they said that they even have hinted that Jesus would consult with Bruce Hales. And if you're just joining us now, Bruce Hales is the leader of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, which is a cult we are discussing. And if he is above Jesus, then they don't need to follow the Bible. So maybe this is his way of skirting around scripture.
Yeah, and I mean they're so preoccupied with making money right now that they have created this Strive 23. So for 2023, they're striving to make $90 million more for their quote unquote schools, which their schools are the people have to pay anyhow to go to the school because it's private. So we all know that this money is not going to their schools.
I went to one of their schools. It was an old house, and there was 12 kids in my class and 14 in the school. I felt bad for the other two. And 90 million, they could have bought so many of those houses. Like literally that was like, what is 90 million going to buy them? Are they putting gold swimming pools in these schools? Oh, wait, you can't have swimming pools in the Plymouth Brethren. Because why? Because they are absolutely terrified of seeing women in bikinis. They're absolutely terrified of them. The breast
I
has
would be
magical
more
powers
terrified
over
of
them.
seeing men in bikinis myself, but
What's the next one?
Okay. Well, members are expected to devote inordinate amounts of time to the group and group-related activities.
That's all they do. There is nothing else to do except be in the brethren and do brethren shit.
And I mean, it's just ridiculous, the amount of time that they have to give. And even in this latest Dean Hales Strive 23 meetings, I guess the Campus and Co was going to open up earlier and stay open later. And the sisters are meant to volunteer more to help their mental health, is what he said. And I mean, I'm listening to this recording and I'm like, he's like just buttering them up left, right, and center by, our sisters are so important. Oh, they're so important to our ecosystem. And I mean, he's just got this salty voice he brings on. And I'm like, are they actually eating this up? It's just like he's pouring buckets of butter over top of you guys and you're soaking it up.
they're so important they aren't allowed to speak in church. Yeah.
Yeah. The women. So if you're joining us, like we're talking about the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, and the women are not allowed to speak during any of the meetings. And no, like even in business, we had this you guys had this on the last episode. It was great. No women can work above a man in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church business system, which is called Universal Business Team. So let's talk about the misogyny for a minute, or should we go on to more?
No, go ahead.
So the women, so their churches are on the inside, they're dish shaped, and there's benches, usually like leather benches around, and the first, let's say 3 or 4 rows are only males. And then the females are allowed to sit in the back rows. And they're not allowed to say anything. And all the males sit down the front, and the most important sit right in the middle of it. But yeah, that's just the point, that the women literally have no part in this, except for giving out. They're allowed to call out the number of a hymn. Oh, big job. It's so mean. It's so disgusting.
Wow. Okay. Members are required to live and are socialized only with other group members. Well, I mean, anybody who knows the PBCC knows that they live, eat, and breathe by this one. And so much so, Richard, is it still a rule that your house can't touch another person's house? Like they can't, do they still believe that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. In fact, in my in a congregation near where I used to live, there was what you would call a townhouse. It was like 2 houses that had a party wall. So, one family lived one side, one family lived the other, separate front doors and so on. And a Brethren member was living in one side of this townhouse, and another Brethren member, to kind of help this guy out when this kind of new rule came in about, not living in a house that's joined to another house, he bought the house the other side, cut the wall away, like cut a slot all the way through 18 inches wide, and built a new wall. So this building that was originally two houses was now two separate buildings. And then he sold the house he'd cut off. And you can actually go on Google Street View and you can see it. There's these rows of pairs of houses, and there's suddenly this one with an 18-inch slot, 2 stories high, clear air all the way through. And I think the brother still lives there. His name's Frank Smith, if you want to look him up.
It's insane. They won't live in apartment buildings, condos, duplexes, townhouses.
Yep.
Excuse me. Nothing like that. In fact, and I've talked about this on another podcast, they went to such lengths when the leader originally. Do you remember what year it was, Richard, that it came out about the houses?
Yeah, it'll be in the 90s, early 90s, 1990s.
Okay. So it's in the 90s. The leader comes out. This would have been John Hales, I guess. And there was these houses in the UK that also had their sewer lines connect with the neighbor and then run to the street and the street's main sewer line. Well, that was considered a link with the devil, a link with the world. So just break that down for a second. Let's break it down. Poo comes out of Wardley Bum. Poo comes out of Brethren Bum. Touches, boom, sin. Right? If it comes down and the poo just goes to the main city pipe and then touches everyone else's poo, no sin.
Yeah, it's the sacred sewage of the saints, Lane.
My brain cells want to commit suicide. This is crazy. I don't even know what to think. It's like dividing by zero.
I hadn't noticed it smelled any better than anyone else's, but maybe I'm prejudiced.
They actually believed so that it really means that sin is much, much more contagious than COVID or the common flu, right? Sin is highly contagious. Whew.
And I mean, we can go into this another app of this description is when you get shut up or confined and you're in the same house, right? You get completely confined to a different area of the home. And I mean, I know we've done another podcast that hasn't come out yet, but Lane, you were telling the story of someone who had their door bolted. Was it the door was bolted shut?
Yeah. I remember this guy got confined when we were living in Montreal, and thank goodness he's out now and happy. And but he got confined, and my dad said he could live in the basement because we had this apartment, right? And so he moves in down there, and I'm actually sneaking him DVDs under the door, right? Because I knew he had a laptop and stuff because I saw the light, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's a rebel. I'm gonna give him DVDs, right?" So I'm slipping movies under the door, and then one day I look out and I see my dad with a drill, and he's drilling the door closed, and I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "There has to be separation." I'm like, "The lock wouldn't work."
Yeah,
right?
He screwed it shut, you said.
Yeah, so why the screw? Why? You just lock the door. I don't.
I mean, we've got stories of how the lengths to have their separation. Okay, let's go on to this last one. The most loyal members, the true belief, feel there can be no life outside the context of the group. They believe there is no other way to be and often fear reprisals to themselves or others if they leave or even consider the group. And you know what? This is something that's really been on lately. To the extent that Bruce Hales has taken this fear. So we've really been informed of teaching this. If you want to leave, it's better to take life than to leave and go to heaven than to leave and go to hell. So he's actually teaching this that it is better to take your life and go to heaven inside the church than to leave and hell. And I have to say that if anybody has any questions or any kind of doubt in their mind by the time we've gotten to the end of this, and I'm saying that, you know now, we are 110%, this is a cult, right? And this could be a cult that easily could end up in a situation like Waco, in a situation that is absolutely devastating if we don't start to take this more serious than we are. And it's literally in print in their ministry that it is better to die than to sin. And I think that for everybody who doesn't like us to use the word cult or has a hard time with us using the word cult to this group, I hope you understand why we use the word cult when you hear us talk about how intense it's got inside there, of the way they install fear to those kids. And so if anybody is watching this that is still in there, and you know that you've been taught this, I want to tell you, and we want to tell you, that life outside is freedom like you've never experienced, and you will not go to hell. If anything, you're going to find out what true heaven is when you leave.
That's a very good point. There's always a brighter day. There absolutely is.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the brethren's, their own speak, like some of their terminology that they use and how they don't even realize how stupid it is. So for instance, this is how awful they are. So recently, I believe it was in the UK, a brethren couple had a newborn baby, and the baby passed away, right? SIDS. And it was a tragedy, obviously, right? Nobody's fault. And the leader, Bruce Hales, has the audacity to say, name the city and locality that this couple lived in, and said, oh, the Lord spoke there. The Lord spoke there. Now let's break that fucking down for a second. What you're saying is that when the Lord Jesus Christ speaks, people die? Is that what you're saying? Because that's what they've said. And they've said it again recently with a cancer case and another sudden death. And they named the city. I'll just say Chicago, for instance. They said, oh, the Lord has spoken twice in Chicago, referring to the deaths of people, meaning that the Lord sends messages by taking people's lives. That sounds like a fucking gangster to me. That sounds like some Tony Soprano shit. What is this, gangster God? Like, come on. The Lord speaks and people die? And you're still listening to this guy? If you're in there right now, you need your head examined.
Yeah. And I mean, while we're on this, there's a few things that have been said that have been written about in Canada Land and our last in the articles that have been in there from when Jesse and Charisse contacted the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, and their spokesperson has come through. And I want us to go through some of these so that we can kind of clear up for those people that are reading these and are on the fence of like, well, there's two different things that are going on here. Let me just find these. Okay, maybe I won't be able to find them.
No?
It's not the same as... Oh, yeah, here we go. Okay. Okay. Here's what we need to go to. So this is an excerpt from one of the Canada Land articles that have gone out recently. The Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, with about 50,000 followers worldwide, calls itself nonpartisan and says its members do not vote. A spokesperson denies the church has any involvement with political activities, and the PBCC denies that they are centrally organized in any way. Like, I do not know. I mean, I don't get how these people that get away with lying like this. Like
If
this
they're
is
not centrally organized, then why did my mother weep at seeing Bruce Hales for 5 minutes in his office? Right? They're centrally organized. They absolutely worship their leader.
And he controls everything globally. I mean, we've got copies of letters that were sent to every single Brethren congregation globally with a detailed list of instructions. You can do this, you can't do this, you must do this, you must do that, signed by Bruce Hales. And you can't, I mean, even as individuals, you cannot get married without his permission. He has to approve your choice of partner. He controls everything in the most minute, microscopic way. He micromanages everyone's lives. There is no more centrally controlled organization on the face of the planet. And yet they say we have no form of central control whatever. I mean, it's not just a twisting of the truth or a rephrasing of something. It's a complete and utter lie. It's the exact opposite of the truth. Everything is centrally controlled.
Yeah.
And it's easy to prove. I mean, we've got the documents to prove it.
I mean, we have a video with 5 people in the front row of Harper's victory speech.
Yeah.
It has no involvement. It
Yeah.
has no involvement. So why were they there? If they have no involvement with political activities, why
Yes,
is there a
5
video?
5 prominent members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church on the very front row.
Yeah.
I
But
was
they're not involved in
personally
political activities.
I was
But they thought
personally
it was a
tasked.
McDonald's and they just walked in. Oh no, sorry, forgot. They're not allowed to go to restaurants.
Yeah. I was
Well, and we have
personally
documents-
tasked during an election for Stephen Harper. I myself was told, put up these posters, and me and my brother went out in trucks late at night and put up posters everywhere. And another Brethren member rented a big boom truck, and we went up in blinding blizzards and put them super high up all over the place. And that was organized and tasked, and we did that in an organized fashion. And on the weekend, we did robocalling to stop the same-sex marriage bill. I remember this very clearly. They were calling. They organized it at my uncle's business, and they all sat around and were calling every member of parliament using fake names and trying to get them to vote no. Which, thank God, they didn't, and thank God it passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a document from 2005 that has 110 different people, brethren, put under one Christian Gospel Publishing, one group, that over 110 contributions to different campaigns under one document, under what, like 110 different people in one Christian gospel, and they're all brethren. So don't say you don't donate. 110 of you did in 1 year.
And Christian and Gospel Publishing is one of the trade names of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. So this isn't just individuals doing it, it's the church doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. PBC spokesperson Merrick Grimshaw tells us that church members' companies are under no obligation to join UBT and that they are able to do business with whomever they choose. They also tell us that the church has no legal, financial, or any other interest in its members' businesses. Okay. And this probably came days after Strive 23 was launched on their you must attend. It wasn't optional. It was you must attend this hour-and-a-half Zoom call. So Dean Hales and his goonies can sit there and tell you how you're going to make $90 million more in 2023. And yet they're trying to tell you that it has no interest in a member's business. It's such bullshit.
Oh, it absolutely is. And about that Strive 23 thing, let's remember that the nice old church, what they did at this massive gathering that they had recently is they called out the cities or localities that didn't perform well financially.
Really?
Because they're not involved in business, right? So they literally called out the ones. They're like, this locality in Cleveland, Chicago, or Boston, you guys need to up your donations. The Hillsers aren't making enough money.
Another point I could make is that you'll find online recruitment advertisements for UBT. Now, UBT is Universal Business Team, and in these, it's when they're trying to recruit staff. And in the recruitment advertisement on Glassdoor, it gives a description of what UBT is, and it says in there, in plain English, that UBT is owned by the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. And it furthermore goes on to say that all of UBT's clients are businesses owned by members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. So how do you reconcile that statement they put out about themselves with the church having no interest at all or connection with the businesses of its members? I mean, it's just a flat contradiction of what they actually advertise in public.
And they're so behind in technology and everything, right? Because they don't allow their members to do anything new, and they have to control the internet. They got to install these spyware programs onto their shit so they can be monitored 24/7.
And even their voice recording, like anything that's recorded through audio, the audio has a tracking on it too.
Yes. Yep. Now, I've got a tip for those people that have UBT computers right now that are listening and that are stuck with Streamline 3 on air. There's a possible workaround. If you do a factory reset of your desktop back to a date before UBT installed Streamline 3, you can possibly wipe it off. It's a possible hack.
Okay, so here's another one. The church spokesperson says the PBCC has not been contacted by the RCMP about these allegations and that the church does not tolerate sexual abuse. Like, sorry, I have to go back to those last 6 words. The church does not tolerate sexual abuse. I mean, we know that this is the biggest, fattest lie in 2022 that could ever be spoken and uttered out of their mouths. I mean, we have multiple people. We had Lara Payne on 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago that we had her broadcasted her podcast. And I mean, she went as far as to going to Maple Creek to meet with a head leader there that was down there for a set of 3-day meetings. And no, it's all covered up. It was all covered up. So, I mean, it covers up as much sexual abuse as it can. This is just a bunch of, it's just bullshit. Absolute. It's just lies.
And if the brethren are listening, just think about this for a second. Hypothetical, a murderer. Do the police usually call that murderer? Hey, buddy, we're investigating you for murder. Yeah, you're not going to know. You're going to be the last thing.
Yeah, and you will be the last one.
Yeah, it'll be fun. You're going to have fun. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So, and this kind of goes on to it. Sexual abuse is a crime which is in no way tolerated by the church, Grimshaw wrote. If anyone has allegations of this nature, they should report them to the police. To our knowledge, no member of the church has been contacted by any law enforcement authority concerning these matters. And so there's no way that they would allow them. So it's so hard because we know the stories. The issue that they're running up into is that there's so many people who are talking to us now that are outside, that they are still inside, that we know the lengths that they will go to have someone drop charges, to have someone not go to the police, to have someone, oh man, I'm just going to quit talking.
Yeah. I mean, we know of very, very serious cases of sexual abuse inside the church where neither the perpetrator or the victims have actually left the church. And so we know about this, but if we were to report it to the authorities, then because those victims are still in the church, they would deny it ever happened.
Yeah.
I mean, let me, and for the brethren that are listening to this, if I mention the city of Leeds in the UK, and I mentioned the possibility that a number of young boys had been sexually abused and that the perpetrator and the victims are all still inside the Brethren, maybe you could have a think about that. Was that ever reported to the police? Will it ever be reported to the police? Or are you going to continue to deny it and cover it up?
They would never go to the police. Never, ever would they go to the police. There's just no way. They do not believe in the law. They don't believe that any brother or sister belongs. I mean, it's been spoken just recently that, yeah, you cannot have a brother in jail. You just, yeah. Okay.
Their policy was literally the assembly is the highest court in the land. And the assembly is this made up place that's their, happy
just them
place or
talking
something.
about themselves.
Yes, exactly. Their assembly. Oh, we are the assembly. It's the assembly. They had all these hilarious names. They're completely nonsensical rhetoric, but the truth, the recovery,
the bride of Christ.
The bride of Christ. Like, I'm like, what? I thought Jesus was gay. But anyway.
Yeah, somebody just commented here. It's sad how many young people are ashamed of the abuse and feel condemned. And that's how they make you feel. That is exactly how they make you feel. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry, someone's going to say something.
It's victim shaming all the time, all the way through. Yeah.
According to the PBCC spokesperson Merritt Grimshaw, the Plymouth Brethren are not a cult. Grimshaw confirmed that, as with other religions, Brethren members can only marry other Brethren members. Grimshaw said that members do not vote or make political donations, but they do use mobile phones, play sports, and dance. Grimshaw said that Brethren have no formal hierarchy, no centralized control, and no paid clergy. In fact, it has no employees at all. And I mean, here we go. Lane had a podcast one day when he went through this list of all of the different kind of programs and ways that they bring in their money. Like, again, this is just an absolute false statement. I would love to meet up with this Merritt Grimshaw. I would love to meet up with him.
I think we should have a round of applause for Merritt Grimshaw as the liar of the year 2022.
Absolutely.
Well done, Merritt Grimshaw.
Exactly.
I mean, his nose must be, his nose must be as long as the highways we have across the globe.
Yeah, I think he has to coil it up just so he can see where he's going.
Yeah. Right. I mean, no formal hierarchy? Are you kidding me? I mean,
that's why they have a seating chart. There's no formal hierarchy.
Yeah,
the most important ones
Exactly.
sit on the front rows, but no formal hierarchy.
I heard recently how their Zoom call meetings have been going during COVID and stuff. Have you heard about how cringy these meetings are over Zoom?
yeah, like families getting into trouble if the families are sitting together and the rearranging right in the middle of it to make sure that the females are in the back and the men are in the front, including the little boys that must,
they have to sit in front of their TV and then they have a camera that watches them and they have to all be dressed right and everything. And this is every night at 7 p.m. Now, here's the creepy part. So what they do is they have to, so how a church gathering would go back when we were in and when they would do them physically in the meeting room is it would start with a prayer or a hymn. I can't remember which one started first, a hymn. Anyway,
first,
the hymn. So they'd all sing a hymn and then a prayer, and then this guy would read out a verse from the Bible, and everyone would talk about it, and he'd discuss it for a little while. Sorry, the males would all talk about it, and then the female was allowed to give out a number of a hymn, and then we would all sing. And so what they've done on Zoom is one family gets tasked with singing the hymn while everybody else just listens. So one family is put on the stage with everybody else muted, and they have to sing the hymn. You know?
Well, it's finally caught up with karaoke night.
Oh, right? Oh, that's hilarious. That's funny. Oh.
So Here we go. The PBCC also denies that they have a formal hierarchy. However, their website lists Bruce Hales as the church's most senior leader.
Most senior and also most junior because he's the only one. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He is their CEO.
Yeah.
The Brethren Church denies shunning occurs in their communities. They say it's up to individual families to decide if they want to communicate with members who have left. Not the church itself would never stand in the way.
Somebody forgot to tell my family. Somebody has not told my family this. They got the wrong information. They haven't talked to me in 14 years.
They did not directly answer questions about whether members are ever instructed to shun members who still live within the community. I mean,
how do they sleep
So
at night
all
lying
those
like
18
this?
young people, did anybody ever tell them they weren't shunned? Like they can come back.
I'm going home tomorrow.
I was in my documentary. I tried to go back in. You saw me walk up to the meeting room in Seattle, and I tried to go back in, and they said no.
Yeah, we haven't. It's too bad we haven't aired that podcast yet, but we did.
That's right. But
we did a podcast, and we actually showed some footage of Lane's documentary of a clip of him trying to go back to meeting, and they didn't let him in. But yet they don't
That's because
shun.
he had thoughts of the world or something, didn't he?
Yeah,
Isn't
well,
that what it
he
was?
had links.
they asked me if I
links
had
to the
links
world,
to the
yeah.
world.
Yeah, he
and
had
I was
links to
like,
the world.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure what that means.
Oh, geez. Anyhow, okay.
Oh.
We are well aware. We have been made aware that the brethren in there do not have links. They don't have they don't have access to just Googling a suicide prevention line. So we are going to put these on here for those that are watching and don't have access or don't know what number to call. So this is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Can you pull it up?
Can you not see it?
No, we can't see it big. It's very small. It's
Really?
thumbnail.
Oh, it's huge on mine. Okay, hang on a second. Huh. Oh, let me share screen again.
The main thing
Lane, there's a
is
question on the screen here. I think it's for you. It says, do the women still have to sit behind the men on these Zoom calls?
yes. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
I don't dare
Not-
answer it,
Not for the recordings though. When you only have to listen to John Hales or like Taylor's old recordings or those old recordings, you can sit next to you don't have to. But when the cameras are on, the females have to be behind.
Okay.
Can you
And
see this now?
wearing a headscarf. Yeah.
Yes, everyone can see that. That's great. That's great.
Okay.
1-800-273-TALK. Okay, that's a
And
number.
then
That's the
this is-
suicide prevention line.
And then
And
this is
another one-
Canada.
This is for Canada. If you're in Canada, it's 1-833-456-4566, or you can just text it 45645. Look, if you're feeling low and you ever are thinking about hurting yourself, call one of these numbers. Seriously, talk to someone. There's always a better day. Always. And if you're inside, there's always the chance that you could leave. Now, Bruce Hales has talked recently in these Levitical meetings. He's talked about this possible big reduction in numbers. So I think it's most likely he's saying this because he's seen some of the stuff that's coming out about the sexual abuse inside the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. And he's probably going, oh shit, this is going to really shake things up. Like people are going to leave, right? And so by prophesizing and saying that it's going to happen, when it does happen, his like super true loyal followers will be like, oh, he said there was going to be people leaving. Like, oh, he said it, And meanwhile, it's going to be people actually waking up to the fact that they're in a cult that abuses people.
I mean, he's preparing for it, right? He knows he knows that the train's just got it's going way too fast for him. So he knows it's going to happen. And what a better way. He always tries to be a couple steps ahead of the game, right? So now they're all sitting there knowing, okay, let's not pay attention. Don't pay attention to those that are leaving. You know, it's coming. And so when it happens, just turn the other way, you know? So here's the question. Does a leader have the need to be adored by his followers? Are there cases when he clearly was personally offended by people that don't seem to take him seriously?
Oh yeah, they get kicked right out.
Yeah.
And he does this weird thing where he doesn't praise himself. He pretends to be humble, but what he does is like glorify the fuck out of his dad. Like he had a seriously messed up relationship with his father, I think, because like he just goes on and on about how amazing and how his father, because his father was the leader, right, before he died, or before Bruce, and so he said that his father was infallible, couldn't make a mistake, right? So what he's saying subtly is that the man of God, his position, the person can't make a mistake. Yeah. So he's subtly brushing himself.
And I get sent recordings all the time. And one of the latest recordings, it's just like these people that stroke his ego of like, oh, well, your father had said this. And I mean, nothing, you got to understand that these are church services that rarely are they talking about biblical verses and discussing biblical verses. We're talking about the great leaders, the great leaders that they don't have. Right, because it's not a centralized hierarchy, right? There's no hierarchy, you know. But they're talking about these great men before them, and like I'm sitting here wanting to puke my guts out at how much these. And you forget when you're in there, but that's how it was. Whoever is taking the lead, everybody sits there and strokes their ego for an hour, and
it's really gross talk, like the way he sounds like, hey, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's beautiful. Really?
There's
someone just said that your dad made a comment about, oh, the Apostle Paul was really a great man. Oh, yes, he's beautiful. Yes, appeal. We just appeal. And it's all this like blah, blah, blah fluff talk that you listen to it and you're like, how are these people listening to that and going, oh, that's good shit? Like, oh, I like listening to that. Like, no, I want to stab my ears with a fucking fork.
Tell them about the canvases, Lane. Remember the canvases?
The canvases.
Yeah.
Oh, my camera's gone all fuzzy again. What do you mean the canvases?
Yeah, well, you always used to. I mean, when I was a kid, you always had a photo of the great leader on the wall, or the great leaders.
Oh,
and,
but there's no hierarchy, Richard.
There's no hierarchy, of course.
Been.
And then in Bruce Hale's era, they came up with this. They realized they could commercialize this, so they produced this great big sort of 6-foot-long canvas, like a painting, if you like, with each of the 7 great leaders on it. Like head and shoulders portraits, all put in a row. So their heads are actually nearly life size. And it costs a fortune. You have to have it. And every single of the like 10,000 or so Brethren households all around the world, they will have this canvas on the wall of the great men, the great leaders. And what they'll also have on the wall is, it must be nearly 30 feet of bookshelves now of ministry books, which are simply transcripts of Bible readings and speeches by the great leaders. But of course, you have to remember they don't have any central control.
You're talking 6-foot-high bookshelves. Like I actually helped my grandpa build one once, because everybody needed this massive bookshelf to hold these incredibly stupid books.
Yeah. That was more push to read that ministry than the Bible.
Absolutely.
Like this is why, like, I think it was so important for us to do this today, because it's hard for those that are really on the outside of this whole chaotic mess that we've made. And believe me, we have to make a mess in order to, I'm going off on a tangent here. I got like my ADHD is kicking in. you talk about if you want to build something new, what do you have to do? You can't just magically boom, there's a new building. What do you have to do? You have to break it down. You've got to take it down. So to everybody that is stressed out about this, that there's too much chaos, there's too much this, there's too much there, how else are you going to rebuild something if you don't tear down the first structure? It's old, it's moldy, it's broken, it's full of, in this
Pedophiles.
case, pedophiles and power hungry, greedy men. The house has to be broken down. So there's going to be a mess. I was talking about something before that. I don't remember.
Yeah, we're good at doing mess.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
Yeah, mess
So
is our
it's-
thing. Yeah.
It's just,
And-
okay, I was going back about the cult. When we talk about a cult, like this is why we call this a cult, is that this is not a Christian church where they're sitting there reading their Bible over and over and over and over. I mean, some might be, but that's not what is pushed. What is pushed is the ministry of the great men. That doesn't.
And let's remember that all these fantastic, great men, none of them had above a high school education.
So here's a question that we have. Earlier discussion, lack of, didn't they used to street preach every day except Sunday? Why do you think that trickled down to almost never? Was too expensive to maintain the farce?
No, because they're too busy making money.
Yeah,
Doesn't take time off
Preach
work
every
to
day
do
except
it.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think honestly, I remember going to a couple street preachings when I was a kid. They kept it up for a little bit. It was on Tuesdays downtown Montreal, and holy fuck, is that embarrassing?
Hmm.
Like you could tell that the guys didn't want to do it. Nobody wanted to do it. Do you want to yell at strangers about going to hell and Jesus is going to save you, and if you don't, you're going to die? Ah! Like nobody
Terribly
wants to do that.
half-hearted, wasn't it? And I mean, you get like this kind of row of brethren and sisters standing in a line, and someone will be standing out front, kind of half-heartedly waving a Bible in the air. I remember one guy walked past and he looked at us and he said, "You guys waiting for a bus?"
But Richard, it was doom preaching. It wasn't happy
Oh, well,
love.
yeah.
No,
It
it
was
wasn't happy.
doomed.
No.
It's like if you don't listen, you know.
Yeah. Anyhow, this is good. I think I think it's important that we really kind of went through why all of us ex-members call this cult a cult. And I needed to, that the whole Canada Land's articles, excellent articles, nothing to do with Canada Land. It was who they were talking to. That was weighing heavy on me. And we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
if you want to hear about the PBCC, check out Canada Land's episodes called Rat Fucker.
Yeah.
They have a series called Rat Fucker that's really good. That talks about the PBCC and he exposes Klondike Papers and explains a lot of stuff. You'll understand.
Yeah. Anyhow, well, thank everybody for coming on, and we had good chats in the
That was fun.
group here. It was fun. Yeah.
Let's keep ripping on the brethren. This
Yeah.
is great entertainment.
Oh, I should have. You know what? I was going to take down the meme that was on Facebook just recently. Oh, it was so good. I forgot to do that. The one with the rocket going
The
into the.
Hindenburg. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, that was perfect.
We'll get it on the next
The
one.
church is going down in flames, and I'm grabbing some popcorn.
Yeah, me too. All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Take care.
Yep.